The candles had burned low in the solar, throwing long, wavering shadows across the carved map of the Seven Kingdoms. Wind pressed at the shutters in gentle insistence, like a lost child knocking. The hush of the hour was complete in the way of a city that holds its breath before dawn. Murmurs gone thin, the bawds and drunks asleep, the last lanterns guttering along the alleys like eyes too tired to stay open. Eddard Stark stood alone at the window, his hand on the stone. The night outside smelled of salt and the faint iron of old blood the city never washed away. Below, the lights of ships swayed at their moorings in the black mirror of the bay, as if 1,000 fireflies had chosen to rest upon the water. Renly's offer hung in the air even after he had gone, as palpable as the smoke of the candles. 100 swords, and more besides, he had said. Knights that keep their word. A swift hand, a sure hand. Take the boy before his mother sets him on a throne. Claim the step, fill the hall, do the thing that must be done if order is to live here one more day. Honor and hard winter lived in Ned's bones. Words with weight, for oath and for duty. Snow, the quiet, the wolf's low breath. Yet here was the lion's den, and the lioness moved faster than honor allowed. Honor had never taken kindly to haste, and yet he felt haste prowling the chamber with him, casting a second shadow behind his. He thought of the king in the bed below, lungs laboring by the hour, thick with wine and pain, and the smell of poppy. The king had fought boars and men with a laugh once. Now he fought his own failing flesh. He thought of the boy with hair bright as new wheat and eyes that gleamed too quick, like flint. He thought of Cersei's mouth when she smiled without warmth and the gold of her gown in sunlight, like a sheaf about to be put to flame. He thought, last, of his daughters, one braided to pleasing, the other scuffed and stubborn, and the gray eyes that had looked up at him in the southern light as if it refused to acknowledge they were far from home. When the wind rose, he felt it lift the hair at his temples. He heard the faint clatter of armor at the turn of a corridor, the respectful cough of a guard outside the door. He saw in his mind's eye the blade of the thing. Delay long enough to be right, and lose all. He could walk the most correct path into ruin. He could hold forth the letter naming him protector to a hall that would be filled by the time he reached it with spears more certain than wax and ink. He rested his brow briefly to the cool stone and closed his eyes. The north was clean in the way of snowfields after a storm. Here, even the bricks felt oily. Decision, when it came as a quiet, iron thing, like frost forming without sound across a pond. Send for Renly, he told the guard, voice low. They found the king's brother in a cloistered passage near the kitchens, speaking with 2 men in Tyrell green and a third whose cloak bore the pale leaping stag, Storm's end stitched in silk. Renly looked, in the brazier's ruddy half-light, young enough to pass for a squire and old enough to rule a city full of knives. His smile when it came was quick, as if he had reached a conclusion before being told the question. You are decided, Renly said softly when they were alone. Ned inclined his head once. We move before dawn. The queen must not leave her rooms. The boy must not enter the hall. I will stand before the throne with the letters and command as protector. We will summon the council. After that, we will see. Renly's gaze cut past Ned's shoulder to where the city spread like a dark pelt across the hills. The watch. I will send for Janos Lint to attend me at once. He may be with the queen. If he is with me, he must stand with me. If he is not, then he is with your enemies already. Renly nodded once, all coiled ease. I can hold the gates of the keep with my own men. Loras will take the queen's wing at first light with 6 of mine and 6 Tyrells who move quiet. There is a passage only the servants use, one the white cloaks pay no mind. If they meet a Kingsguard, no blood if it can be helped, Ned said, and the man he was insisted on those words though a thinner voice whispered that blood never asked for permission. The children are not to be harmed. Not a bruise. Renly turned that over, and Ned watched the calculation move behind the Baratheon green eyes. As you say, we are not monsters. If Ser Barristan stands in our path, Ser Barristan will keep the king's peace until compelled by a stronger command, Ned said. I have known such men. He can be a rock if a just thing leans on him. Do not give him cause to make the wrong stand. It will be done. Renly's mouth quirked. He looked very young. I confess I feared you would drown in your own scruples. my lord. I say it with affection. You have the look of a man who would measure a rope twice before saving a drowning child with it." Ned did not answer that. Renly stepped closer. "When the hall is ours," Renly said, nearly to himself now, "we will find the sense of it. The city obeys the man who holds the steps, not the man who recites the order of names. We will find the right in it," Ned said quietly. "Ah," Renly said, and smiled like a candle gone high. "Perhaps tonight those are the same thing." They parted without clasping hands. There was an old superstition in the north about sealing war councils with palms. Ned felt no inclination to test it. When the younger man had gone, the solar felt different by a degree, as if a single stone in the floor had been replaced by iron while he watched. He called his men one by one into the chamber, moving like a man drifting between two lives. Tomard came first, with a face that looked carved from an old log, eyes bright despite the hour. Harwin followed, taller by half a head, with dust still at the cuffs of his boots from some errand he'd run that evening across the yard. Var, Ly with his soft step and his soft voice. The three looked at their lord and the room as men do when they scent a storm before feeling the rain. "There will be trouble at dawn," Ned said. "Not in the streets, I hope, but in the halls. I would have my household ready to move at a word. No rash hands, but steel-filled. Our first duty is my daughters. You will bring them to me in the throne room once the hall is ours. No one stops you. If anyone lays hand upon either of them, take that hand." Tomard's beard shifted as he set his teeth. "I am lord," he rumbled. "Varley," Ned added. "Go to Septa Mordain. Have her wake the girls. Quiet. Arya first. Tell her to dress in plain things. A dark cloak. She will balk. Let her. Do not argue with her too long. Sansa," he paused, sensing as much as thinking. "Sansa will not understand our haste. She may weep. Tell her it concerns the king's illness, that it is war of a sort. Do not lie beyond that. See them to the passage behind this room, and wait with them until I send word." Varley slipped away like a shadow. Ned felt the old leather of his chair under his palm, worn where his hand had rested on other nights while reading old letters from winterbound lords whose names now seemed to belong to someone else's life. He wanted to sit, just for a moment, and could not let himself. He looked at Harwin. "Seek out Sirio Farrell," he said. "He will be with Arya at the hour of lesson. Bring him to me. He should stand with her if I am delayed." Harwin nodded, the seriousness in his face taking on a kind of brightness, as if the man within had tightened his belts and tied his hair. A thought came sudden as a bird dipping to a river's surface, and Ned marked it. "Go by kitchen ways," he said. "Avoid the queen's men." He dismissed them. When the door closed, the room gave back the sound of his own breath. He stood a long while again, the way a man stands before plunging his hands into a basin to wash blood from them. He had made this choice. He felt in himself both the stillness that follows a blade finding the exact place between ribs and the ripple of fear that followed it as night follows dusk. He must see the girls before anything else. It was the one thing he knew as surely as he knew the way the wind would feel against his face in the wolfswood. He took a candle and crossed the passage to the suite where his daughter slept, and the flame drew a faint gleam from mosaics of little birds overhead, each tile no bigger than a fingernail, some artisan's precise labor wasted on a ceiling no one looked at. He paused outside the chamber and heard the soft murmur of women. Inside, Septa Mordain was lacing Sansa's bodice with fingers that trembled only slightly, her mouth thin with worry and purpose. Sansa stood straight as a reed at the river's edge, wide-eyed but composed, which was the thing she had learned too well in this place. Arya was wrestling a sleeve that had turned inside out, hair sticking in odd directions like a bristle brush, jaw already set against direction. Her eyes, so like his own, went to him at once. "Father," she said, relief and curiosity twisted together. "My lord," Sansa breathed, and a curtsy swayed her skirts just so. "Dawn is near," Ned said softly. He kept his voice even. "There is like to be unrest. The king is very ill and has named me protector. Until I have put the hall in order, you will remain by my chambers. You will obey Septa Mordain and Tomard and Varley. You will not wander. Arya, do you hear me?" Arya's mouth crooked. I always hear you. Do you listen? Sometimes, she said, and then as if she had given away too much, added, I can be quick, quicker than Tom. Do not be quicker than caution, he said, and allowed himself the smallest rasp of iron in his tone. There will be time enough to fence with your water dancer. First, you will do as I ask, and as the Septa directs, and as Harwin tells you if he must. Sansa, can I trust you to comfort your sister if she grows wild? Sansa bit her lip in that fashion her mother had loathed. Yes, father, she said. Is the king? Is he dying? I will know that better when the maester says so, Ned said, and the evasion tasted of tin. Pray for him. Pray for us all. Sansa took a breath that tried to steady itself halfway. Arya scowled at the floor and then back up at him, as if challenging the stone under their feet to deny there was a dawn. He looked at them both and felt a pain that was not sharp but enormous and laboring, like a mountain moving under clouds. Your mother has a look she gives me when I must do something foolishly brave, he said after a moment, without planning the words. I cannot see her face now, but I can feel her look. Is this brave? Arya asked at once. It must be something, he said, and ruffled her hair. The little breath of laughter that escaped her softened his heart so badly he almost wished to gather them and flee to the ships at first light, sail and never look back. He left because that is what he could do. When the door had closed upon the murmur again, he stood in the passage with the candle and listened as if the stones would counsel him. Instead, footsteps approached, soft and precise, and a fragrance like lemon drifted before the man in the doorway. Lord Stark, Varys murmured, dipping his head just enough to indicate respect while implying a confidence they had not agreed to share. I have a sorrow for your sleeplessness. The night is a tiresome companion for men of conscience. Has the queen moved? Ned asked. Not a turn of a key, Varys said with the placid calm of water. His robes swished faintly when he shifted weight. There is, however, a current that grows. The Watch has been told conflicting stories. Some speak of a proclamation at dawn. Some of the king's illness being worsened by a certain draft. Small men have been paid large sums to repeat the first lie that suits their paymasters. You know the man who paid them, Ned said. I know the purse, Varys corrected gently. It is embroidered with the little leaping hound that suits a certain lord's humor. Ned held his eyes. Send your little birds to roost, Master Varys. It is going to be a loud morning. I would not have small wings torn in it. The spymaster's gaze fluttered, and he smiled in a way that showed nothing of teeth and everything of calculation. How kind my lord is to think of children even when the lions are waking. I shall counsel them to sing softly until the bells finish. Will you stand against me? Against? Varys made a shape with his lips that would have been surprise in a less practiced man. I stand, Lord Stark, where the realm can be held together by the thinnest threads, because I have seen what happens when men pluck them for sport. Do what you will with the hall. I ask only that you leave me the ravens. Write what you will, Ned said. I have letters of my own to send. Varys inclined his head again and melted down the corridor like a silk poured away from a cup. Ned watched him go, uneasy in the way of a man who senses a chessboard under his feet and cannot quite tell how the squares lie. He returned to the Solar. He wrote with a firm hand despite the weakness under his ribs. To Stannis he wrote first, because right was more important than ease. He wrote of Robert's letter and of the need for the true heir to come to the city without delay, guarded and grim. He asked no favor and offered none except the law. He did not flatter. He had never learned to do it well. He sealed the letter with the direwolf and the king's own broken seal on its companion copy and put them to one side. To his son he wrote more slowly. Robb was winter and youth and the feel of a sword he had finally grown into. Ned thought of his boy standing in the yard at Winterfell with breath purling in air so cold it rang. He thought of the way Robb had laughed when Bran had stolen his cloak and run with it, dark hair bright with ice. He wrote of politics as if telling him of a battle's necessary ugliness, and he wrote of care. He told him to keep the trident between himself and any Southron host until the truth unraveled its knots. He wrote to Catelyn last, knowing that each word would be traced by her eyes like a lover's hand. He did not tell her to be careful. He told her that he would come home. He did not yet know whether he lied. When the letters lay folded and sealed and stacked, the candle had burned to a nub. He sent for a boy from the rookery and gave him the names in a low voice. He watched the boy hold the bundle as if it warmed his belly. "Go by the old steps," Ned said. "Avoid the guard posts. If questioned, say nothing. If pressed, say you carry orders for the hand. If pressed further, run." The boy ran without being pressed at all. Beyond the windows, the black was turning the sort of gray that comes just before a fog thinks better of itself and lifts. Ned buckled his sword. He had carried ice in his life as a younger man and felt then the rightness of its weight on cold mornings. Now he carried a Southron blade as a man wears a pen in a city of clerks. He did not love it, but a sword is a sword, and the steel will do what is asked of it if the hand does not shake. Renly joined him with quiet, commendable punctuality, and with him came a fragrance that spoke of horse leathers oiled with care, sweat from men who had not slept, and green cloth rubbed by rushes. Loras was with him, his beauty ridiculous at this hour when even the roses looked sullen. The young knight's eyes were as bright as foxfire and as unreadable. "Now?" Renly said, and did not lift his voice a fraction. Ned's household and Renly's men moved like threads braided together with surprising ease, as if they had been laid in the loom long ago. Knights in singed yellow gambesons and knights with little sprays of rose worked gold at their throats crossed the yard in darkness. Boots soundless on straw-scattered stones. The shadow of the keep rose above them like something whose skin was more barnacle than brick. They skirted the mews. They slipped through the narrow door that kitchens used for the passage of slops, and went down into the belly of the keep where walls sweated faintly and the air tasted of iron pots and burnt grease. They walked along a corridor that servants kept so clean it had that private smell places have when only the invisible use them. At a certain door, Loras stopped without ceremony and exchanged a look with a woman older than the oldest wine steward, who wore linen the color of unbaked bread and a face of lined stone. She touched the wall without looking, found a latch that was not a latch, and drew a panel aside that had no right to be there. Renly dipped to kiss the old woman's hand, and that was perhaps his first wisdom of the day. "Go," he said, and 6 men went, and then 6 more, and then 3 who did not wear any house badge at all. Ned waited with Renly outside the panel, where a cool breath came up from the passage beyond. He counted slowly in his head, a habit learned in a different weather, when counting sheep as they moved through a narrow gate could tell you whether a thief had been busy. He reached 30 before he heard a sound that was not a sound and knew it for the hiss of a whisper, and at 50 he heard the step of a man careful with his feet because he carried a thing that clanked. At 70, a guard passed them at a distance. A gold cloak turned toward the court, yawning into his fist. When men returned from the passage, they came like knives sheathed in human skin, eyes sharp and one of them wiping something from his cheek that wasn't blood. Loras leaned his head close and murmured to Renly so low that the word itself might not have mattered, only the warmth of it. Renly nodded once. Loras vanished. A moment later, a small hand flickered at the edge of the secret panel, as if a mouse had become bold, enough to ask to be let in. Then Tommen Baratheon stepped into the kitchen darkness with his hair mussed and a look on his face like a boy who has been woken in the first dark of winter and told there are wolves at the gate. He looked younger than he had at supper. Myrcella followed with chin up, which meant pride and fear had come to some private accord. Cersei came last, flanked by men whose faces looked open in the way of men about to shut their eyes and swing their swords at whatever moves. She saw Ned and her mouth made that shape he had seen before on the field of truce when something came to her that she could not appear not to desire. "Lord Stark," she said, and if fear touched her, it did not trouble her voice. "You keep odd company before the morning. I wonder if your god approves of kitchen intrigues." "The king has named me protector," Ned said. "Until the realm knows more, you will remain in your chambers with your children. For your safety, for theirs." Her laughter was a small bright thing that rang off pots that had seen worse. She brushed her daughter's sleeve as a hawk might, measuring for fit. Myrcella did not flinch, though the pulse had sprung at her throat. Tommen was staring at Loras's dawn-blue cloak as if it held a story he wanted to live in. "The realm," Cersei said, "often means my Lord Stark. It is charming, this habit of believing your own reflection stands for the sky." She looked to Renly then, letting the gaze slide and bite in the same motion. And the king's brother creeps along servants' ways. Will you show me the trick where you pull a crown from a pot? Renly's smile had the openness of a well-taught child. You will keep to your rooms, sister. I have never kept well, she said, and smiled back with gold and knives in it. If you force me to lock the door, Ned said, I will. This is not a debate. The children will be comfortable. Food will come. You will have servants of your choosing. You will not go to the throne room today. I thank you for your kindness, she said, and did not. Shall I send you wine? Shall I send gold to people who cannot be bought? Tell me where the holes are in the bucket, Lord Stark, and I will promise not to pour through them. Tell me who you truly trust, so I may keep your favorite dogs from being poisoned. I am, after all, a mother. Take them, Renly said, not turning his head. Loras's men stepped forward, and the king's guard present, Ser Marin, heavy as afternoon meat, and Ser Boros, who had a bull's face that had been carved by an indifferent hand, moved hands to sword hilts that they did not wish to use in a kitchen. Renly lifted 2 fingers. Loras set his hand lightly on Tommen's shoulder, as if he were guiding him to a feast. Myrcella watched with bright, frightened pride and then took her mother's hand without being told. Cersei squeezed once, too hard, and then loosed and bent as if to adjust her daughter's hair. And while she bent, her eyes flicked up at Ned, and what he saw there burned more cleanly than fire. Tell the hall, she said to no one who would admit hearing. Tell them the butcher has been kind enough to wash his knife. He watched them go as he would watch a storm cross a valley toward afar would where his sons hunted. He did not move. He felt Renly's gaze on his cheek. You see, Renly said, and it sounded like triumph dressed as caution, how easy good sense can be. It is not yet easy, Ned said. He listened, but the keep did not shriek. The men did not clash at the stair. The city did not throw down its lion banners and replace them with stags. The hush was breaking all the same. Bells began to stir like cattle in their stalls. When he went to the throne room, he went not as a conqueror but as a man who meant to meet another man's word with his own. The steps to the hall were worn in the center from the passage of smaller hopes than this one. His boots knew the dips by now. The doors stood open. Dust hung inside like thin sea fog. Sunlances found their way in through the high, narrow windows, as if the morning thought better of visiting such a place and sent only scouts. The Iron Throne squatted ahead like a heap of nettles hammered into the shape of a seat that never fit anyone. His men stood to either side in a manner that was not a guard and not a challenge. He walked between them and mounted the first step. He did not sit. He turned and faced the hall. The small council trickled in with a slowness that was skilled, as if each man had calculated the particular advantage his timing would buy. Grand Maester Pycelle trembled his way across the stones like a poplar in wind and composed himself at a breath. His rings clicked gently against one another when he folded his hands. Littlefinger came with a smile muted enough to count as grief, his cloak a shade too fine for the hour. Varys arrived without arriving, one moment absent, the next present, a pale moth at the edge of a fire. Ser Barristan came last of that first set, and he walked as if the hall were a field, and his boots had mud on them, and the swords had been better then. Ned held out the letter. Barristan took it, eyes flicking not to read something for himself that he already knew, but to see if the seal was the seal it had been the last time he saw it. He opened it and read anyway, because that was the sort of man he had always been, and when he looked up, his face had the softness of a good man's steel. The king named you protector until the heir comes of age, Barristan said into the air, and his voice lifted a little and settled in the rafters. It is written and true. The boy will not sit the throne today, Ned said. He is safe with his mother. The city will not burn this morning. Send for Lord Commander of the Watch. A runner went. The hall shifted subtly, as if the stone balked. Yano Slint arrived with a host of little gold that clattered beneath the great gold of his cloak. He bowed too deeply, and stood too soon, as men do who believe their backs are a subject. He set his mouth in a shape that might have been respect and might have been the smallest rebellion. My lord, Slint said, tone oiled. You sent word. You will keep your men to their barracks until you are summoned to the hall, Ned said. You will leave the gates of the keep in the hands of Lord Renly's men. You will patrol the streets to prevent looting. You will come to the hall alone when summoned. Do you understand me, Lord Janos? The smallest tick in Slint's cheek betrayed the man under the embroidery. He had expected to be flattered and asked, not told. It is unusual, my lord, to ask the watch to be idle upon a day of importance. It is more unusual to ask the watch to choose its masters, Ned said quietly. Stand down or stand revealed. Slint looked to Littlefinger, who folded his hands as if praying and looked at the floor as if it contained a joke in small type. Slint looked back. He bowed again, this time to the degree the hall was accustomed to seeing, and left with a swiftness that suggested obedience and carried the scent of calculation. When the echo of his boots died, a half-smile that was not a smile at all touched Littlefinger's mouth. You give orders as if men were ink lines? Peter murmured, just for Ned. Take care, my lord. Ink obeys the quill when the quill is in hand. When the ink is spilled, it obeys gravity. Your counsel is always so charmingly drawn, Ned said. Charm is the only coin I am permitted to spend, Littlefinger said, lifting his brows. I expend it with care. The queen will not sit in her rooms for long. She will gather the watch like lemons in a basket. There are more of them than of your household. I am not alone, Ned said. None of us are, Littlefinger said. That is why we are dangerous. Ned let that rest where it fell. He did not pay for Peter's herbs. He looked to Varys. Send for the lords of the court, he said. Let them see that peace is a thing that can be held. Bring the counselors. Bring the masters of the guilds. Bring the High Septon if he will come. I will speak. Varys inclined his head in a way that indicated he had anticipated the instruction, and in that moment the hall began to fill, which is a magic few men can make occur and which Varys had learned at birth. Ned spoke when enough had gathered to make the words heavy. He said the king had named him protector. He said the heir would be named before the gods and witnesses, and that until then the realm would be governed according to the law. He did not speak of incest or of what letters lay locked in his chest with the cold smell of raven's feathers. He did not speak of treason by this house or that. He spoke of order and of children and of food promised to the hungry, and of the harbor staying open and the walls staying patrolled. And he used the words that farmers and merchants understand when they bring their goods over long roads and hope not to be robbed by whomever keeps the road that day. When he finished, the hall breathed out in the way of men who have been waiting to judge whether the thing in front of them is a snake or a rope. The murmur rose. Somewhere a man sneezed. Somewhere else a woman laughed and smothered it with her hand lest someone see. The sun had found its courage and was laying long bars across the floor. Motes rose in them like a million unsteady stars. Only then did Cersei come. The doors opened, and she came with a walk that said she had been walking across the world for 15 years and found it too small and would not be slowed now. She had put on a gown the color of molten coin and a collar of greenish gems that lay upon her throat like summer leaves. The two Kingsguard who had stayed with her did not look at Ned. They looked at the back of the man in front of them as if his spine contained a path. Behind came gold cloaks, but fewer than Ned feared and more than he liked. She stopped 3 paces into the light and tilted her head. I cannot imagine how I might have missed the rising, she said in a voice that did not need to lift to reach the rafters. The sun is up, the birds sing, and I find the hall paved with my brother-in-law's ambition and my late husband's mistakes. Murmur flickered along the crowd like heat along a horizon. Renly, at Ned's right hand, smiled with a leisure that acted as iron guard. He had washed his face. He looked like someone painting mourning upon his own skin. The king named Lord Stark Protector, Renly said. You are to keep your rooms today, Cersei. She ignored him with art. Her gaze drifted to the throne and beyond it, and to the corner where Varys stood with hands laced. She took it all in and placed it on a shelf behind her eyes. I dreamed last night, she said, and her eyes settled on Ned's face, laurel on branch. Do you believe in dreams, Lord Stark? I believe in the day, Ned said. In my dream, she went on as if he had not spoken. I saw a wolf stand upon the steps and wag its tail at me as if I were its master. The hall went very still. Peter Baelish, somewhere behind, made a sound like a man sucking honey from a bone. It could have been laughter, or he could have stubbed his toe. Ned did not answer dreaming. He gave instruction instead. Ser Barristan, he said. I ask that you bring the late king's will before the court." Barristan did as asked. Pycelle took it and peered and made little show of the seal and the script. "It is plain," the old man said in a voice faint and reedy. "Lord Eddard Stark to act as protector, the heir-to-be." His voice thinned further, as if the word itself were caught in his long white hairs. "Named according to the law and blood. And so it shall be," Ned said. "Until then, no boy sits the throne to be a sword hung on by men with stronger wrists." And there was the flicker, the flash, the sudden bright drop of a hawk set loose. Cersei smiled outright. "A thing of light on blade. You speak of men with strong wrists, Lord Stark," she said, that sweet venom sliding on the polished floor. "You do not speak of your own." She lifted her hand casually, and an echo of metal sounded at the doors. The gold cloaks there did not try to hide their numbers now. Men who had come in with her moved to either side and found their places like actors who had rehearsed through the night. Renly, at Ned's shoulder, did not look behind him, and that was his salvation. He looked instead to the side door, where Loras had placed 2 of his men with faces blank as bread. He lifted his hand an inch. It was not much more than the twitch of a man swatting a fly. The gold cloaks at the door hesitated as if a rope had been thrown across their knees. Janos Slynt stood behind them with a look on his face like a man whose dinner had been taken from his plate and who was trying to decide whether to complain to the cook. He licked his lips. His plan slithered. Ned watched the man arrive at his choice like a gambler who knows the coins are somehow not his. "Hold," Slynt called, and his voice rang because he wanted it to be heard by both sides and be recorded by neither. "Hold, in the king's name." "In the king's brother's name," Renly said lazily. "Do choose, Janos." Perhaps it was luck. Perhaps it was gold that had been handed out more quickly by one hand than the other. Perhaps it was a story told twice in the night and believed only the second time. The gold cloaks at the door set their spears but more firmly on the stones and kept their places. Not a man moved toward the steps. Not a man did what Cersei's eyes asked of him. It was one of those moments that could tip and kill. If Ser Boros had drawn then and run, if a boy had shouted, if a horse had screamed in the yard beyond, it would have been blood. Instead, a rook cried sharply outside and then was silent. Ned saw the shape of the thing suddenly. He saw the way Littlefinger tipped his head, the way Varys's hands did not tremble, the way Pycelle's eyes narrowed to slits behind his lashes as if he had turned into a frog of the university. He saw the pattern Renly had hung one thread at a time in the night. Not control, not certainty, but instability in the correct direction. Cersei turned her face toward Janos Slynt, and her look could have cut cloth. "My lord," she said, and sweetness drew blood from the word. "You will bring your men forward and arrest the traitor at the foot of the throne." Slynt swallowed and raised his hand as if to wave a fly again. His arm hung in the air too long, an arm that had forgotten how to move. At last, he lowered it. "I will keep the king's peace," he announced and looked at Ser Barristan as if for absolution. Barristan did not smile. He bowed slightly toward the notion of the peace itself, as if to say that if it had arrived late to the hall it was, at least, present. Cersei's nostrils flared. The line of her jaw altered by a breath, a worry of some tight muscle in the cheek that gave away the strain of it. She did not allow the rest of her face to change. She looked at Ned and lifted her chin. "It seems," she said, "that you have made more speed than I anticipated. How un-northern of you." "I will not be goaded," Ned said, and he meant it mostly for himself. "You will return to your rooms. I will send for you at noon to hear the health of the king." She gave him a little curtsy that was the least courtesy anyone ever performed in the history of their raw, biting world. She turned, and the rustle of her gown was more dangerous in its way than a sword. She left the hall like a ship leaving harbor for a storm, taking none of it with her and somehow making it emptier by going. When she had gone, the hall felt as if it had exhaled and inhaled simultaneously. Men looked at one another and found their hands, as if those hands belonged to them again. Renly let out a breath and then put it back, as if saving it for later. "You have the morning," he said in a tone that was mostly relief and partly hunger. "Now you must make it a day." Ned did not ask for the details of what Renly had paid, who had been promised what meat and wine, who had been whispered to, who had been reminded of debts. He did not ask because he was not the man who paid in that coin and never had been, and because he had chosen now to be the man who took advantage of it for a better outcome than the coin would have bought by itself. He wondered if the gods counted the difference. He wondered if it mattered. He sent for more men he trusted, thin as those ranks had become. He sent for Braun, a sellsword whose name had come to him through his steward with a note attached that said, simply, "Will fight for his own head first and yours second," which was honesty in its way. He sent for others whose fealty lay not with House Stark, but with the idea of waking tomorrow in a city unburnt, and with the same number of fingers as today. He sent for the heads of guilds and asked them to keep their men sober for a day in exchange for indulgences for a week. He sent for the High Septon and found him kneeling already in the sept, praying with both hands open, which had always been his posture. By mid-morning, he had a list of men who could be counted upon to set their boots where he told them to set them, and a longer list of men who could be counted upon to go where the crowd went. He placed Harwin with 2 others at the door behind the dais, where only the clever would search for weakness. He placed Tomard at the turn of the stair toward the Queen's wing, which was a crude position and therefore likely to be attacked directly. He placed Varley wherever he wasn't, which was a trick the man had perfected long ago. Along the edges of it all, it went quietly wrong in small ways that are a day's price for pushing at the world's ribs. A boy dropped a bowl in the kitchens and cut his hand and cried so loud a Lannister man in the next room thought it his duty to investigate. He did not return to his room with both ears, but he did return to his room breathing. A group of gold cloaks started a quarrel with a Tyrell knight over whether a certain stew belonged to the watch as a matter of right. The steward took the pot and fed none of them, which was the finest judgment handed down in the keep all morning. Around noon, the bells tolled slowly for the king. It was not the morning that might come, but the kind of toll that says a man's breath is shallow and counted. The sound ran along the bones of the city and up the hill to the hall. It laid a quiet over men's shoulders. Ned looked at Ser Barristan and saw in the old man's eyes a sorrow that showed the child he had once been, before any sword was placed into his palm. "Go," Ned said quietly. "Sit with him. If he asks for anyone, call me." Barristan bowed. No, not bowed. That was the wrong word. He agreed his spine to Ned's instruction, and then he went. Renly left for a time, too. He wanted to press his men along the inner ring of the city to ensure the watch did not take courage in numbers where caution had been enforced by shock. He wanted perhaps to visit the Queen's wing and put his ear to the door, just to hear if laughter was still being practiced within. He went with a brisk step that under its surface contained something tremulous, the awareness that their victory was less a fortress than a fence of sticks erected before a herd and expected to hold only if the cattle decided to respect it. In the lull that followed, Ned sat for the first time that day. He sat not upon the throne but upon the step below it and felt under his palm the nicked, cool metal scales that had been meant to mock kings. He felt the weight of the hall around him and closed his eyes briefly, not to sleep but to hold his breath without being watched. When he opened them, a man stood before him, having arranged his arrival to be unnoticed. "Lord Stark," Peter Baelish said in a tone as light as ash, "forgive the liberty. I prefer to speak to men when they are briefly seated. Gravity aids my cause." "You are the gravity," Ned said dryly. "Elsewhere, perhaps. Here I am a seed on the wind." Peter's eyes were clear and cool. "You have done a thing most men would have the sense not to attempt. I salute you." "If this is flattery," Ned said, "you are wasting it." "It is observation," Peter replied. "You have not thought far enough ahead to know where you need flatterers. May I offer a path your feet will not prefer, but which will not rut as quickly?" "Speak." "You have kept the boy from the throne for a day," Peter said. "At some point, you must place someone upon it. The girl can be married quickly, but that is a different game. Stannis is law. Renly is appetite. Joffrey is disaster. Tommen is, dear boy, but malleable, and you will not have his mother long out of the loop. My counsel is this: do not name, yet. Call a great council for a month hence. Summon lords to the city. Offer pardons to those who come. Use the time to set your feet in the city and in the watch. The queen will hoard knives. Make sure the scabbards belong to you. When they arrive, the men who can matter will be forced by their own weight to choose the stone that they think will sink least. Most will end up on Stannis. Some will surprise you. And Renly, he will find a crown too heavy for his neck if it is his alone to raise, Peter said. Perhaps he will discover a taste for crowns that are held up by other men's arms. Perhaps he will content himself with holding the city for his brother. Perhaps he will break. Men are jars with cracks you cannot see from outside. You speak as if you admire him. I admire anyone who does not bore me, Peter said. It is a short list. Do you take my counsel? I take the thought of it, Ned said. That will have to do. Take this also, Peter said softly, and for the first time that day something like sincerity moved in his voice. A strange creature poking its nose from a cave. Do not trust Janos Slint at your back or your side. Trust him only in front of you, moving towards someone else. Ned narrowed his eyes. Why warn me of the man you might use? Because if he betrays you today, he will betray me tomorrow, Peter said, and smiled. Some men are not worth coin. They devalue your purse by being seen near it. He moved away without waiting for thanks or reprimand. Ned watched him go and thought of wolves moving on snow, their shapes clean and quiet, their mouths open just enough to show the white inside. In the afternoon, Ser Barristan sent for him. Ned rose at once and walked the shadowed corridor alone. Men drew back and let him pass in a manner that made him suspect he had been, at last, named in their private accounts as something other than a temporary thing. The king's chamber smelled of sweet rushes and the sharp, medicinal tang of crushed plants. The curtains had been drawn back to let in light, and that light looked pale upon Robert's skin. The king's eyes were closed. His chest rose, fell, rose, with the regularity of a man sleeping after a hunt, which was a cruel trick of the poppy. The boar had been a better adversary than his own heart. Pycelle dozed in a chair with his mouth open, the picture of learned age. Barristan stood at the foot of the bed with hands so relaxed at his sides it might have been ritual in some other, kinder religion. Does he know us? Ned asked quietly. Not today, Barristan said. Ned stood a while and looked down at the man who had come north with laughter on his lips, snow in his beard, and madness in the set of his eyes. The good kind, the kind that makes friends over bread and meat and promises they have no business making. He thought of the boy on the road who had crowed at the found casks. He thought of the man who had asked him to make the hard choice and then gone hunting to avoid seeing it done. He leaned his head. The poppy spared many good men the need to regret. He turned to leave and saw a shape in the corner that someone had neglected to remove. Be silent. Queen Cersei sat in a chair so stiff it looked it might crack out from under anyone living. She watched her husband sleep as if he were a tapestry that had swallowed some piece of her life and would not spit it out. Her face, without the hall and its demands upon it, looked younger and more tired. There was another word under it he did not expect to find, and he set it aside. Her eyes flicked to him and then to Ser Barristan and stayed there a moment in calculation. She did not speak. Ned did not speak either. They stood thus in a room where a life went on without them. He left at last, and with him the sense of crossing a threshold no one would ever be allowed to cross again. He returned to the hall because that was where the day had chosen to be. Renly had returned as well and wore dust on his boots and the flush of a man who has argued loudly in the sun and won the argument but lost something in the winning. He looked up when Ned stepped back into the light, and there was a moment between them where they counted one another, then stopped like men at the edge of a poem, undecided if it must be spoken or held. I have a thought, Renly said without preamble. Many, in fact, but one we must move on. Send your letters and your ravens. Call your council. But the city must know a shape that will comfort it while these games are played. If we do not give them a pageant, they will invent one. What would you have? Ned asked, wary. A progress, Renly said. Not the fool's kind. A small one. You endure being seen. I parade the safeguards. We will walk the market and the street of flour and stand before the steps. You will speak of bread and of harvest. You will speak of debts paid and wolves who keep the lambs by eating only those wolves who have forgotten they are wolves. Men will relax by inches. In the corners where the watch could be roused to riot, the tension will be bled off by women laughing at your northern severity. You are very fond of laughter as law, Ned said. I am fond of any law men will obey, Renly said. You are fond of the true law. If we can make them the same today, so much the better. Ned considered it and recognized the use in it. He did not like it. It felt like a play. He had been an uninteresting actor all his life, and now he was asked to make the unspooling of a realm into something men could applaud for a while and then go about their business. But he thought of the smell of smoke he had known in other burned towns and the way children look when they learn their father's face is not a shield against the world. He nodded. They went without trappings. 24 men only, no more, with Loras at their left and Tomard at their right and Harwin moving somehow to both flanks at once. The market had emptied in the way of markets when bells have rung and the city's chest has jumped. Then, because coin must move, it had filled again. The men who saw them lifted hands and not swords, which was the proof of the plan for the day. Women of the fishwives lifted their skirts and laughed, naming the penury of men in a way that could be heard by everyone and meant for none of them to be offended. Ned stood before the stall of a man who salted pork and heard himself telling the fellow that the taxes on salt would not rise this month, and the man had the gall to say that he would be disappointed in his gossip and then wink. Renly bought an apple from a boy who had stolen it from the very pile he sold from, and then told the boy to sit his arse down and watch the stall while the real seller used the jakes. Laughter again. This was how you govern a city for one afternoon. You stepped on the throat of fear and made it believe it was a lark. At the steps of the Great Sept, the High Septon met them with an assortment of men in robes, and the crowd that always hovered there like dust in sunlight. Ned spoke briefly as decided. He did not promise what he could not give. He spoke of peace, and of the king's illness, and of the need to treat one another as if they intended to live in the same city tomorrow. He heard his own voice and did not like it much, but he saw men look to their wives and nod, and a woman lift a child to her hip and kiss his hair as if the hair were the news. He saw, too, the men who watched and did not nod and did not laugh. Men with knives at their belts who had the taut look of string not yet plucked. He saw a boy too tall for his years and too thin who kept looking to the alley beyond the square where another boy shifted his weight, and between them moved a hunger thin as winter wind. These, too, were the city. He stored them in his mind without a place to put them yet. When they returned to the keep, the light had gone white and thin. In the yard, a knot of men had gathered near the well, and the sound they made was not laughter and not terrible either. It was the sound of worry shared. They broke when Renly and Ned crossed the yard, as puddles break around a cartwheel. Harwin came to him fast, concern cutting his features into harder lines. "Arya?" he said at once, and Ned's heart flopped like a fish in a too shallow basin until Harwin lifted a hand. "She is safe. She is in your chambers." Sirio Farrell sent word that a man lurked near the Septa's rooms with a look that did not belong in a hallway where children sleep. He led her away and stayed behind. Varley went after to see if there was blood. "There is none. Yet." Ned let out the breath he had been made of for a moment. He nodded once, and it felt as if his head were a knob suddenly too large for its socket. "Where is Sansa?" "In the Septa's care," Harwin said. "She is well." She asked if there would be a feast tonight in honor of peace. A muscle in Ned's jaw tightened. "Perhaps there will," he said. "Perhaps the gods will, Sept tears as dressings for a roast." He went to his chambers at once. Arya met him with hair wild and eyes brighter than one would wish. She had her wooden sword in hand. She gripped it the way men grip things they know are nearly useless and intend to use anyway. "Sirio says I must hit the stick, not where the stick was," she announced, before he asked a question. "Sirio is right," Ned said. He knelt, which allowed him to place his hands on her shoulders. He felt the life in her through the linen and the air. "You may not go beyond this passage. You may not slip through any of the little doors you have found. And yes, I know you have found them, because I see the dust on your hems." She had the honesty to look down at them. "The passage helps one think," she said. "I could see so many things from there without being seen." "There is a time for seeing and not being seen," he said. "This is not that time. This is the time for being where I ask you to be." Weary as he was, he touched her cheek and the place where it hollowed before the jaw, as if he could mark her with safety by touch. He hugged her briefly and hard, and she endured it like a warrior in training, with a small grimace and patience, which made him smile despite himself. When the day lost its knees and went to ground, they brought him the news. Robert Baratheon, king of the Undulls and the First Men, had died when the sky turned the color of a peach already gone sweet. The bells that followed were not the warning at morning. They were the measured toll of a thing finished. The city heard and shook and rearranged itself along old scars. The hall filled without being asked, because men have always wished to be near the fire when a big tree falls. Ned stood in the gallery and found he could not dislike Robert for dying. He had always thought he would be angrier when the day came, and the city turned on a hinge and he was made to hold it. But the anger had been burnt already across the fields of their shared life. What remained was grief, which is a clean thing if one does not add water. He sat on the step once more, because sitting on the throne would have been worse than folly. It would have been bait. He spoke when necessary, called the septon to the hall to speak the words, allowed Pycelle the little incantations he loved the sound of. He watched Cersei, who wore grief like a garment sewn with iron. He watched Renly, who wore something like ambition with an undershirt of what might astonishingly have been duty. He watched Littlefinger and Varys and thought no thoughts that one can put into language, because some things must be felt without the yoke of vocabulary to be recognized as the warnings they are. In the hush after ceremony, when a man might have heard a mouse sob if such a thing were possible, Varys slid to his elbow. "The ravens flew," Varys whispered. "One for Storm's End, one for Dragonstone, one, I assume, for the north. A flock. The sky will be busy this week. They will be met with men who can read," Ned said. "They will be met with men who can count," Varys corrected, sadness in his tone as if he could help no more than the tide could. And perhaps he could not. Night came as if it had been waiting at the window all day, too polite to interrupt. Torches were lit. Men's shoulders slumped. Women gathered small children. Somewhere in the city a fight began, and the watch put it down quickly. In the places where the watch did not venture, a different kind of peace reigned. In the last light, Renly came to him with a look on his face that reminded Ned unhelpfully of that boy he had grown with in Winterfell who had broken a window with a snow-packed stone and could not bring himself to confess it. Renly's sin would be nothing so childish, but guilt, unlike crowns, fits all heads. "I must leave," Renly said simply. Ned looked at him until Renly shifted his weight. Men who are used to being admired do not like being looked at as problems to be solved. "Where do you go, Lord Renly?" "To the Reach," Renly said, and did not pretend otherwise. "Mace Tyrell's gold will buy more certainty than the gold cloaks. If Stannis moves, and he will not move with flowers in his train. I will have flowers. I will have more swords than there are men to hold them. Then I will come north again." "You asked me to seize the day with you," Ned said. "You ask me now to hold it alone. I ask you to hold it with me later." Renly's smile had none of his earlier coin shimmer. It was smaller, and it was not a smile for the hall. "Do you think the city will be more loyal to the brother who reads the law than to the brother who dances? You will keep the law safe. I will come back with what is needed to keep it respected. Between us, perhaps we make the thing work. And in the middle," Ned said, "a boy and his mother will wait with a knife behind every tapestry." Renly made a face that might have been apology. "I cannot cage every lion before my army grows. Cage the right ones. Leave the rest to me. When I return, we will make a proper cage." He looked Ned in the eyes, and something asked there, simple as a child's question. "Do you trust that I want something beyond my own name engraved in metal?" Ned looked at him for a long time in the light that had no strength left and the shadows that wanted all. He did not answer the question. He said, "Go then. Go quickly. Send word that will mean something." Renly's hand touched his arm, quick as a bird settling and lifting again. "You are better at this than anyone will ever say," he said. "That is why you must do it." Renly left before midnight with fewer men than he wanted and more than a careful man would have allowed him to take. Loras went with him, because he was the young summer and would not be wintered in a hall. The city felt their departure like a horse feels a rider slip from its back. A sudden balance returned. A different danger arrived. Ned stood at the high window of his chambers and watched a lantern's glow move down the road, then vanish, then appear again. When it disappeared for good, he turned and found Arya on his bed. Asleep in a position that suggested a fall from some height had deposited her there sideways. He smiled despite himself, and despite the day that had eaten smiles. He went to Sansa next. She slept neatly, perhaps even prettily. The word made him uncomfortable, as if beauty were a thing to be worn while sleeping. Septa Mordain sat in a chair nearby with her lips moving faintly and eyes open at half-mast, praying and dozing by turns. He eased the door shut and leaned his head briefly against the wood on the far side like a man greeting an old friend with whom he no longer had words. He thought of Caitlin, the shape of her hand that he could still feel like a brand on his own. He wished that the gods took bribes. He would have given them a city's worth of silver for his wife's counsel in this place where every word birthed 3 more. The night held. The day had struck and not shattered them. It had not struck hard enough to make the next day easy, but it had struck. Toward dawn, Varys came again without sound and without offense, like the hour itself when sleep has failed you and you decide to rise. He did not enter the chamber. He stood in the passage and spoke in the sort of murmur that had a way of placing itself on the ear without scraping it. "Storm's End will send word," Varys said. "Dragonstone as well. It will not be banners first. It will be letters. Men always send letters first when what they will send after is more deadly. I will answer letters with letters," Ned said, "until I must answer swords with swords." "Lovely symmetry," Varys admired. "Pardons will be writ tomorrow?" Pardons. The word tasted unripe. "For those who chose wrongly at first light and had sense later," Varys said. "It is a useful trick to keep a city from filling with men who have nothing to lose. Keep enough men thinking a change of heart will be rewarded, and in a month you will have bought yourself 1,000 small loyalties. People are practical." Ned closed his eyes briefly, then opened them because the world requires witnesses. "I will consider it." Varys's lips pursed in the manner of a man who has gotten much of what he wants, which is never all. "One other thing. The little bird who sings in the place where the Lannisters whisper informs me that the Queen will send for her father." "She should have done it yesterday," Ned said, and the fatalism in his voice surprised even him. "He will come. He will come slowly and heavy," Varys said. "In the meantime, she will sharpen the knives she can carry herself. Beware the pain of a woman who is lost. It is pain with ambition. Beware the pride of a man who has won before," Ned returned. "It is pride with blindness." Varys inclined himself minutely, the bow of someone who had not yet been taught how by a swordmaster. He drifted away down the passage. Ned stood in the doorway and watched shadows behave as if nothing had changed since they were created. The sun came up on the second day with more nerve, as if it had decided the city deserved light. The harbor threw back brightness into the faces of men who did not wish to be seen while doing their work. The smells of baking and of the hot, slimy stones by the drains filled the air with familiar nausea. Bells rang again, smaller now, closer to the hum of ordinary life. Ned broke his fast with porridge that tasted like something he remembered from being a boy and then discovered it had been salted wrong and laughed once silently at the jest the gods shared with him. Letters came and were opened and answered, their wax cooling in the morning air. Robb's reply was not among them yet. The North took its time, always, even when the South would brook no delay. From Dragonstone, a raven with an intelligent eye had brought a letter that made Ned imagine the man who had written it frowning between words. Stannis did not waste ink on politeness, which made Ned like him better than anyone else at court had taught him to. Stannis accepted that Robert had named Ned Protector and that law had called Stannis to the throne, and that hence all men should act accordingly. He concluded with the brief instruction that Ned should secure the city's obedience by noon on the second day and prepare a clean hall for the naming on the third. Ned rubbed a thumb along the edge of the paper and felt the cut he would receive if he pressed too close. From the Eyrie came a letter that smelled faintly of mountain air and clung to his fingers more than it should, as if the paper itself were fragile. Lisa wrote in a hand that had not been taught to hold still by grief, and told him everything and nothing, that she guarded her son closely, that the city would eat him if he came, that the lions had poisoned her husband and would poison the world. Ned read it and put it aside with a sigh, which was like setting a bird back in a nest whose branches were already breaking. From his own son, at last, came a raven with a patchy wing that had been brave enough to cross the neck and the river's mists. Robb's hand looked like a boy's who had learned to write with a sword in the other hand, but the words had steadiness. He promised to call the banners if called, and to hold the trident's crossings for the king's peace and not for any one man's ambition. He asked for his sisters. He asked his father to come home. Ned put this letter under the others, as a man might keep bread on the bottommost shelf so as not to eat it too quickly. The small council met again and made the sort of noises it always made when presented with work. Variegated, pryingly helpful, petty. Varys suggested that men who had whispered the wrong thing yesterday be given something small today so they might whisper better tomorrow. Pycelle suggested that the treasury was ailing and that funerals see. Ost coin. Littlefinger suggested that coin could be found among men who had not thought to hide it from him yet. Ned suggested that men could learn not to be jackals if given an example that fed them without blood. The looks that went around the table were precisely what he knew they'd be, and he did not regret saying it anyway. Cersei did not attend the morning council. There were signs of her everywhere. A boy bruised for misdelivering a note. A cook pale as dough who had tasted a sauce and found it too bitter, then discovered the bitterness came from something not edible at all. A maid turned out of her service without explanation and found later weeping behind the stables with a piece of broken comb in her fist, as if that were what she had been accused of stealing. Ned sent a new comb. He could not send a new fear, because fear is the one commodity cities produce themselves without the help of farms. He visited the Queen after midday, because it had to be done. He went with no more than 2 men and left them outside the door to show that this was not a raid. Inside, the air smelled of flowers and of that goldish scent that came from certain perfumes. A smell like a candle had been allowed to melt onto the skin. Cersei stood at the balcony with one hand on the stone as if it were the only honest thing in the place. She did not turn. "You are brave to come alone," she said. "You are stupid to come alone." Both are qualities men in the songs have when they are about to be killed by a woman who smiled at them first. "I am not dead yet," Ned said. "You are not," she allowed. She turned then. "You hold my children. I protect them," he said, and the distinction mattered more to him than it did to the air in the room. "I will not see them used as rods to beat the city into one shape or another, while men still argue what shape is best. You made them rods the moment you refused their king. Their father is dead," Ned said. "The man you put upon the throne in his name will make a war that will feed upon them first and last. He is not ready for life, let alone a crown." A flash of something not like hatred and not like love moved behind her eyes and was gone so quickly he could not be sure he had seen it. "You speak as if you know the boy who came from my body." "I know boys," Ned said. "I have raised them. I know what men can make of them when they are used as flags." "And what of girls?" she asked suddenly, a knife thrown not at his chest but somewhere lower, where bleedings do not show. "What do men make of them? I see your daughters walking the halls, and I see other fathers' sons look at them as if they were cups to be drunk from and left upon the table." He held her gaze and did not let the anger rise above his collar. "We will not talk of my daughters," he said. She smiled and made a little bow, as if he had given her a piece in a game she liked. "As you wish," she said. "You will lose them anyway, if you lose this little contest of ours. You will lose them even if you win. Women do not win in these halls, Lord Stark. We survive. We choose who to bleed for. That is not winning. That is surviving." "I did not come to argue the nature of victory with you," he said. "You came," she said, "because you think you can cow me with pointed thoughts and the memory of a man who loved you better than he ought. You came because you think yourself the winter, and that winter is inevitable." He let that hang. "I came to tell you that you will not leave your rooms without escort, that any letter you write will be read, that any man who takes your order will answer to me for the manner in which he fulfills it. I came to invite you to the hall at noon tomorrow when I will read the king's words again and name the law that follows. I came to tell you that if you poison anyone again, be it with poppy or with words, you will find your cloaks have fewer men in them than you recall." She took a step closer. "Do you think me a fool? I think you a queen in a city you cannot control today," he said evenly. "I think you a mother in a place where the teeth are longer than your nails. I think you a woman whose father will come and grind half of the city into sand to make room for his wagons. I will build a bridge of law from here to there. You may walk it or not." She laughed then, the first honest sound she had made. "A bridge of law," she said. "How pretty, how northern. Make it of ice." It will melt and drown you, and I will not soil my shoes. Go, Lord Stark. Take your bridge and your vows and your children you think safe and go. Come back tomorrow with your sums. We will see who can count better." He left her because staying would have been to fall into the rhythm of her dance, which she had practiced longer. In the corridor, one of his men looked at him anxiously. He shook his head once, and the anxiety turned into a kind of resolve that sits badly on young faces. Toward evening, word came from the Riverlands like the smell of rain in a city that had forgotten the country. Muted, surprising, a promise and a threat at once. Raiders in red cloaks had been seen near the Mummers Ford. A village had burned. The Blackfish rode the fords and swore at the sky to bring men sooner than ravens could. Ned felt the lines of the thing extend. He saw the map in his mind. The rivers, the white shapes of keeps, the long neck ribboning down from the north like a tightening noose held by a giant. He looked at the letters he had written and thought of the letters he would have to write, and for a moment his heart longed for a ruined simplicity. A horse, a field of frost, an enemy as straightforward as a man on the other end of steel. He was, for a time, spared the choice of whether to sleep. There are places in a day where a man sits and the day passes its weight from one shoulder to the other without his consent. Those small surrenders that keep a man's bones from breaking. He surrendered to one now, S.I. Ting at the window, the city murmuring like an animal at rest. Sirio Farrell came to him after the candles had been trimmed, and the former first sort of bravos had the dignity of a man who does not bow to chairs nor stand for lack of them. He stood just inside the doorway, eyes amused, mouth polite. "You wanted to see me?" Sirio said. "I wanted to thank you," Ned said honestly. "For Arya. I teach her to look where the feet go, not where the head nods," Sirio said with pleasure. "She will be very good. She has a heart that does not lie to itself." Ned nodded. He found himself smiling at the little man. "You think I lie to myself," he said without rancor. "Of course," Sirio said. "All men do. Some choose pretty lies. You choose strong ones. They hold longer." He cocked his head. "You must be careful. Strong lies, when they break, cut deeper." Ned thought of bridges and of ice, and of the way steel looks under moonlight. "I will be careful," he said. "You will be what you are," Sirio corrected cheerfully. "Careful is not that." He stepped back to the door and paused there, his hand on the frame like a dancer pausing mid-step. "Tomorrow, I teach your girl to listen to the wind. She will like that," Ned said. "She will like what keeps her alive," Sirio said, and left. Night folded itself neatly. The city, so loud earlier, remembered how to whisper. A raven disturbed the air at some hour when men who have lost count of their choosing think the day must start again just after this breath. Ned slept then, briefly, and woke to the sound of light in the glass. The easier, softer note it makes when morning has found it. On the third day, the hall filled as promised. Men's faces looked more settled, which is not to say they looked pleased. It is a relief to have a rule, even one you intend to break. He read the letter again. He had, in the night, drafted the announcement of the great council Peter had suggested, naming the place and the date in a voice that did not tremble. He named the smaller councils that would accompany it, the counts of bread, of men, of debt. He announced the pardons Varys had recommended, crafted to be large enough to catch the fish he wished to catch and small enough not to empty the net of any need to draw it. He declared the harbor safe, the markets open, the city under the peace of the king he refused to name until law could carry the word. It was less a coronation than a harvest tally. Men nodded. Girls looked bored. Somewhere, in a corner, a boy tossed a bit of cloth in the air and caught it, practicing for a day when knives would be required. Cersei attended today, dressed in white with pearls so small they looked like dew. She said nothing. She watched each speaker as if casting them in some play in her head and assigning them the roles of dead men. Janos Slint stood nearer to his men than to the dais, which was wise. Ser Barristan stood at Ned's left, and Ned felt steadied, the way a man feels steadied by the sight of a familiar mountain. Renly was gone. The absence had a shape of its own, a Renly-shaped hole into which speculation poured. When the words were done, when the hall had exhaled and scattered, Peter came to him again with that infuriating quiet. "You have done the dull work well," he said. "We must now prepare for the interesting kind." "I had hoped the dull would suffice," Ned said dryly. "It never does," Peter said, and for a breath looked honestly sad about it. Then he smiled. "I will, in the coming days, find money you will not ask me where I found. You will spend it on men and oats. You will spend it on bread. You will spend it on the idle days of useless men, so they do not become less useless in a manner that requires cleaning up. You will be bored, and you will be grateful." Ned surprised them both by laughing softly. "Find your sums," he said. "I will spend them as if I were not proud." As noon came on, the day did what all days do once they have been ordered properly. It found a way to disorder itself. A rider arrived blowing like a bellows with word that a Lannister host had left the west with banners high and a pace that was more force than haste. Another messenger came with a hand-scrawled note that had been intercepted and yet seemed to wish to be found. A promise of silver to certain captains of the watch if they would find themselves in a certain alley at a certain hour. Varys took the note and smiled as at a familiar recipe. "I will alter their diet," he said. News came, too, that Renly had not gone lightly from the city. He had taken with him 3 men of note whose names, when spoken in the right rooms, caused the air to change temperature. Men who had made friends at feasts and in beds and in gaming dens. Men who would bring to bear not only their swords but their addresses. The ones one whispers through doors when one wishes to open them without knocking. Ned sat with that news and felt the balance of the thing move, very slightly, like a table set not exactly level. He could eat from it. The soup would run to the edge. By sunset, the hall was quiet. The day had been held again. He went to his daughters because that was what he had learned to do on days when he had not been able to be the man he wanted. Sansa sang to him, shyly, a song about a girl who had thought she loved a knight and found out she had loved a man who could not be won. Arya asked him if river water in the sun looked like steel. He answered them both as well as he was able. When night fell the 3rd time, Ned Stark sat at his window and listened to the city he had not chosen and had chosen all at once, and thought of winter and of summer and of wars that are fought not always with men in rows, but sometimes with men in chambers whose walls press inward and seem to lean. He had seized nothing he wished to own. He had grabbed the tail of a thing because it had begun to move in a direction that would drag the world after it. He was not done. Days to come would pull his choice through the looms of 100 hungry hands. His letters would be answered with swords. His enemies would agree to things they did not mean and punish others for not meaning them. His daughters would learn that courage wears many more faces than merely the forward one. He would learn that bridges of law need buttresses of grain and barrels and men whose honor bends just enough not to snap. He slept for an hour before the bells rang again. The bells rang because somewhere beyond the city, down the road that bruised itself against the river, a company of men in crimson had found a village unlucky enough to be between 2 tides. The bells rang because the gods love a pattern and wanted to tell him that morning and evening are mirrors in a certain kind of world. The bells rang, and he rose, and he buckled his sword, and he went out into the hall where torches made the air taste of pitch and where his men were already moving, as if the day had been waiting all along inside the night. All that had been held must be held again. The throne did not move. It waited for men. The city waited. The wolves waited. The lions sharpened their smiles. The stags ran, antlers high, toward a forest they could not yet see the edges of. And Ned, in the middle, chose again.